Hi, everyone. This is your host, Maheen, and welcome to the Canadian SME Small Business Podcast, where we're thrilled to be back with another enriching episode where our show is committed to spotlighting the pulse of small and medium enterprises across Canada. Today, we delve into the fascinating world of data-driven insights and with a focus on the Canadian coffee and restaurant sectors, exploring how technology is reshaping these industries. With us today is Ara Kharazian, a research and data lead at Square, where he's the principal developer behind the Square Payroll Index. Ara's cutting edge research on consumer and business trends has been featured in major publications like the New York Times and Bloomberg. He's here to share his insights on the latest trends in Canada's hospitality sector and how technology is fueling business growth. Um, Welcome, Ara. It's fantastic to have you with us today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Exciting.
Your work at Square is transforming how businesses really understand and leverage data, and we're quite eager to dive into your insights and discuss the power of data in shaping business strategies. Let's begin by really discussing coffee business economics because the Canadian coffee market seems like a small slice of the economy, but it tells so much about consumer habits and economic health. Um, to begin with, can you highlight some of the most compelling findings from the recent Square Canada coffee report?
Right. First of all, thank you. I think you're making a really strong point right from the beginning that coffee is not the largest sector in Canada, but it is a highly visible sector, right? It is the sort of daily payment that a lot of people make. It is the first interaction most people have with the economy. And so I think, most people's interaction with those daily moments of commerce is going to influence how they feel about the economy too.
Mhm.
We also know it's one of the key components of spending that someone might be inclined to pull back on if they're not feeling particularly confident about their economic situation or they're not feeling particularly confident about the economy. And for what it's worth, what Square found in its recent report, what we've been working on, is that coffee culture is alive and strong. We found that coffee sales on our platform are up 40% over the last year. Coffee shops active on our platform are up about 28%. We've also seen a significant change in sort of coffee prices over the last couple of years, but somewhat generally tracking inflation. We could talk a little bit about that. But I think there's a key economic story that you can see in how people are buying coffee and how businesses are selling it.
No, thank you, Era. I mean, it's quite clear that coffee trends are more than just about the taste. They're truly a reflection of our broad economic climate. But how do these findings inform like what actions business owners should take moving forward?
Sure. Well, let's start with some of the key challenges that business owners are facing right now, right? Business owners are facing rising costs, not just in sort of the production of coffee, but just rising costs in terms of operating a business. It's been a fairly transformative couple of years for businesses, coffee shops, small businesses, restaurants uh, across countries. But that story happens in Canada too, right? So one key thing we've been working on at Square is tracking wage growth uh, for food and beverage workers in Canada. So what we're finding right now is that the average food and beverage worker in Canada is making about 17.20 an hour.
Hmm.
That's up about 4.5% from last year. It was 16.46 last year on average. That doesn't sound like. I think that's actually going to surprise people with how high it is. It's also been a fairly transformative couple of years for wage growth. If you look at wage growth charts, the past couple of years have been uh, unusually high. Generally what we saw in terms of wage growth over the past, pre-pandemic, we're seeing something in sort of the very low single digits, 1, 2, maybe 3%. Now we're seeing something about 4 or 5. We actually saw something upwards of like 6, 7, 8 in the US last year. So a lot of wage growth over the last couple of years. That's going to impact the price of a cup of coffee. It's going to impact the ability of a business owner to operate on razor thin margins. It's going to impact the business's ability to scale up very quickly, not just because wages are really high, but it's become increasingly difficult to attract and retain talented employees. It's become increasingly difficult to expand your business even in good times because you're hitting that upper constraint of getting talented workers who can support the business. On Square's platform, what we found is a lot of creativity from business owners, right? If you're having trouble hiring, if you're having trouble scaling up very quickly, we've seen a lot of businesses lean into technology to grow their business instead, right? If you don't have people who can staff a register, you can use Square Kiosk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Automate that part of the stack. Make sure that consumers can directly sort of go and interact with a business without and order something without necessarily talking to staff if that's not available. We've seen automation in loyalty and marketing campaigns, right? Seeing businesses bring in more customers and bring in more regular customers without having to hire a marketing staff, right? We have features on our platform now that let you use AI to actually draft a loyalty and marketing email and send it out automatically to a sort of intelligently selected segment of your customers. All of these tools are ways that we've seen businesses increasingly scale up and grow their businesses in a time where running a business is both increasingly competitive and also difficult to an environment in which it is difficult to scale up that business for a number of reasons. Increasingly competitive because we do see, even though sales are up, consumers are hesitant to pay high prices. A lot of people are still feeling the impact of inflation. You need to be able to sort of get people into the door anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee sales especially have been highly indexed to the office worker population. So we've heard a lot of stories about business owners in sort of downtown areas who have seen a reduction in sales during certain times of day because their regulars aren't coming in anymore as they were in 2019, early 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What is that business owner going to do to make sure they can keep their profits up, revenues up, keep their employees staffed, and keep their revenues coming in, right? Attract their loyal customers through other means, using those loyalty campaigns, using those marketing campaigns, trying to scale up and automate your business where you can.
Right.
So challenging couple of years for businesses. I think the creativity that we've seen has been really remarkable. I think it's why we have such a resilient food and bev sector. And there's a lot of talk about how there's so much, transformation in the food and bev sector, but I think it's also a sector that is uniquely equipped to address consumer demand in the same long-term way as a restaurant or a coffee shop can address consumer demand in the day-to-day way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy, for example, who goes to a restaurant or a coffee shop and asks for this modification or that modification that's not on the menu,
Mm-hmm.
and hopes that they can accommodate my annoying request. And for the most part, and if there's any coffee shop owners listening, I want to thank you for always accommodating my requests because you guys are actually really good at it. And so it's not surprising to me that even the sort of the long-term macro of the transforming economy of business owner is able to transform their business to fit these larger trends of consumer change.
You've shared some great insights, and I'd love to expand a bit more on the wage trends in hospitality. But before that, I really want to take a pause and really reflect on what you just shared about the food and bev industry. I mean, it's so fascinating to see how something as everyday as our coffee consumption can really reveal so much about economic trends. And this is for our listeners. For all of you entrepreneurs that are out there, think about what seemingly, small details in your business might be telling the bigger stories about your consumer behavior. We need to think and remind ourselves about questions such as, are there any trends in our own data that could help steer our own business decisions? But all right, moving into the arena of wages, I mean, which always sparks, a lively discussion, especially in the hospitality sector. What impact is the current average hourly wage having on the hospitality industry in Canada?
Yeah. Look, I think labor is probably we talk about labor a lot, and I still think it's actually under discussed as one of the very key transformations in the industry over the last couple of years. Again, if you look at a chart of wage growth over the last 10 years, there was a shocking increase in wage growth from about 2021 through 2023, and still kind of being shown in economic data. We see that with Square payroll data. The data that we get in Canada is from sellers that use Square time cards to manage their staff. So we get a lot of information about the hours that coffee shop workers are working, but we also get sort of wage information from that. So we're using this granular level of information to produce our analysis. Now, the advantage of that, by the way, is that it comes in a little bit faster than a lot of public data. So we get to make predictions and trends and forecasts based on sort of what we're seeing in the business. And what we're finding is that although wage growth has come down a lot, it's calmed down a lot. The past couple of years of wage growth were still so significant for business owners that they required a very significant realignment in how businesses need to operate. A business that already had razor thin margins in 2019, suddenly seeing in 2020, 2021, 2022, a reduction in demand from the pandemic, reduction in demand that later came back, but then also seeing a significant rise in payroll costs due to rising labor demand. That's going to eat into very razor thin margins and require a lot of adjustment from the business, a lot of reevaluation of ways that the business has run. There's two parts of the sort of profit equation, right? It's like revenues and costs, right? You can either raise your revenues or you can lower costs, or you can do both. That's what increases your profits, right? So the revenue side is you either get more people in the door, use technology to do that, use automation, use loyalty campaigns, use marketing campaigns, use the data that you can collect from point of sale systems like Square that tell you all the different segments of your consumer base and tell you how to get these people into the door, track trends in your actual foot traffic of your store so that you can better plan your business. So that's the revenue side, right? And the cost side is how do you control your costs? How do you make sure that you increase the revenue side without increasing your costs too drastically, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to come from, ideally, at least the things I'm focused on, using technology in a way that might help you scale your business without, blowing up your cost structure. And so I think that's been sort of one of the key trends lately.
Your insights on wage impacts really offers a crucial lens through which businesses can view their staffing strategies. So thank you so much for shedding light on this, Ara. Now let's take a step back and think about the wage dynamics that Ara mentioned. And this is for our listeners, which is it's quite a critical factor for any business, especially in hospitality. And how are wages or how are wage changes affecting our sector? More importantly, how might we adapt our business model to stay competitive and fair? I mean, this is a great time for all of us to really consider the balance between managing costs and really investing in our teams. Our next topic, Ara, is consumer spending on coffee. I mean, with the price of lattes climbing, everyone's wondering how this affects the little indulgences that so many of us look forward to. Have you noticed any significant changes in consumer behavior as coffee price rises?
Yeah, a great question. So I think there's some good news. Average price of coffee in Canada now is about $2.95. That's up about 1.5% over the last year. That's actually less than the overall inflation rate in Canada, by the way. Overall inflation is about 2.7%. So on Square's platform, generally we're seeing coffee prices track below inflation. So that should be pleasant news for consumers that at least your daily spend or your daily indulgence or however you want to classify coffee spending in your accounting structure is growing at a rate slower than overall consumer prices. If that provides any reprieve to any listeners, I hope that is helpful for them. That's also not going to be evenly distributed geographically or even product-wise. Actually, the price of a latte is now up about 5% year over year. That's past that's sort of outpacing inflation. And it's about over $5 now, $5.19. There's a geographic side too, where there are certain parts of Canada that are seeing that already post higher prices on average for even these sort of couple dollars that coffee generally costs, right? So in Yukon, you're seeing coffee ranging from about $4 to about $6.50 for a latte. British Columbia, about $3 to $5.19 for a latte. It's a little bit higher than the average that you're seeing in Canada overall. So all of that to these I think there's an instinct to say that these high increases these sort of couple percentage point increases in coffee prices are going to dampen consumer demand a lot. I would say it's not clear that we're seeing a dampening in consumer demand, right? Key thing to understand about inflation is that when it occurs, at least this most recent bout of inflation, when it occurs, what's been occurring generally is occurring because consumers are continuing to spend money despite increasing prices.
Mm.
So now it's also true that the inflation that we saw over the last couple of years has calmed down a lot. Just over the last month, like we went down from 2.9 to 2.7%. That's a really good sign. That's really good news for consumers. We want to get that down as much as possible to the 2% range. So those are the important metrics we're tracking. Is consumer spend gonna, transform a lot because of the inflation rate? I think it's hard to say that. I think it's unlikely that we're going to see coffee spending, coffee consumption move significantly because of sort of these macro trends in inflation rates, right? Like coffee is a small part of a person's daily budget. So I think it's unlikely that people are going to massively change those habits just because of like 1 to 2 to 3% changes.
Right.
That said, I do think coffee prices can significantly affect a person's perception of the economy, right? So we saw this last year in North America with literally the grocery market for eggs,
Hmm.
right? Where egg prices suddenly went up, you know, tens of percentage points last year. And, uh, you know, it was so sudden and it was so unusual, but it was very short term, right? So grocery stores, we saw it at grocery stores, but, it's unlikely the restaurant is going to change their cost structure because, you know, an egg sandwich now costs like 10 cents more to make. Not going to raise
Hmm.
the price of that in the short term. But it does, as a consumer, it does affect your perception of inflation because it is that thing that you see every day plastered in the store. Same
Right.
thing with gas prices, right? It's the price that you see driving down the street, and so a consumer sees that and thinks the gas price is high, therefore the economy must be. It has sort of an overweighted effect on people's perceptions of the economy and price movements. I think coffee is going to be the same way, where I don't see coffee demand moving a lot with inflation trends. I don't see coffee demand changing a lot with the Bank of Canada rate.
Hmm.
I do see coffee prices influencing the consumer's perception of the economy and making them sort of think, oh, the economy is good, bad, or otherwise. Another example of that is a consumer walking into a store and seeing that their coffee shop is having trouble hiring because they have like the constant help wanted sign on their door, and that makes them think, oh, okay, like the economy is growing and there's a hiring issue maybe, and that sort of informs your perception of the economy. And I research the economy for my job, and I'll admit I do that too. I
Okay.
have those same instincts when I walk into a restaurant or a coffee shop where my perceptions about the broader economy are influenced by my daily interactions as a consumer in this market.
Hmm. It's quite fascinating to see how businesses can really adapt to maintain customer loyalty even as prices go up. But looking globally now, our transaction data can offer a window into consumer behavior worldwide, which is gold for local strategies.
Yeah.
From your perspective at Square, what are some key global trends that Canadian businesses should be paying attention to?
Sure. I think look, I think any business should be paying attention to the central bank's interest rate, right? If you are a business and you want to expand, this should, I think this is going to come as very standard advice, right? If you're a business that wants to expand and you want to borrow to do so, you want to be following Bank of Canada interest rate because that's going to affect your cost of borrowing. So that's the number one thing I think matters for most businesses. Uh, I think, look, it's definitely important to look at global trends, look at the unemployment rate. That's going to inform your understanding of how easy or hard it's going to be to hire. I think a very underrated data point is I think business owners should be very well apprised of the average hourly earnings for workers in your area. This is a big part of why we've been putting out Square Payroll Index. So our economic research that tracks earnings for food and bev workers in Canada and other countries as well. Part of what we're trying to do with that is make sure it's very easily accessible for a business owner to know, in my city, in my province right now, across Canada, how much should I be paying my workers to be a competitive employer?
Mm.
Because I think people forget that if you're a business owner and you are having a retention problem and your employees are just leaving, or you're having trouble hiring or retaining talent, I think business owners forget that the past couple of years have shown such tremendous wage growth that it's very possible that the wages that you are paying have completely fallen out of market competitiveness. and you may very reasonably not be aware of the current market rate and whether or not you're tracking with that. So a big part of what we've been trying to do with Square's economic research is to make that information much more easily accessible to a business owner so that they know, how much are workers being paid in my area, and am I above or below that average? One of the key principles of economics is that people make better decisions when presented with better information, right? As an economist, I don't suggest that I have the right or wrong answer, but I do think that providing people with the best access to data and information and analysis can allow people to make the best decisions for their business. And so one of my priorities at Square has been to make that economic research as easily accessible to a business owner so that a business can make the decisions that make most sense for them. And similarly, we can talk about the global metrics, but I think you should look at your business metrics. One of the really nice things I think about Square's product platform is that in the same way that I track these macro business stats about Canada and global markets, Square would allow you to track the equivalent business stats for your specific business. So track the demand, track the people coming into your store, really get a solid granular view of which customers are coming in, which segments you can attract, which segments you can grow. How is your revenue trending over time? How are your payroll costs trending over time? Combining that with sort of your banking and the banking platform, I think, as well. Mm-hmm. So, but data is going to be a very powerful tool for any business owner. I think it is very hard to use effectively. I think platforms that make it easily accessible are going to be the most important for business owners. Whether that is tracking key business stats from the Bank of Canada, or if it's going to be tracking your day-to-day revenues as a small business owner.
That's quite invaluable, Ara. I mean, harnessing global trends for local success is an art, and your perspective really helps our listeners see the bigger picture. Now, as we dive deep into the digital age, data privacy remains at the forefront of everyone's minds. How is Square navigating the complex waters of data privacy while ensuring that client data is secure?
Sure. No, great question. All of Square's hardware products are PCI compliant, meet industry-leading standards to manage the network, secure the products, and set policies across the org. So I think it's all done sort of meeting local and global security standards.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, thank you for your forward-looking insights, and because really understanding these, tech trends and privacy issues, it's crucial for any business that is striving to really stay ahead in today's digital world. Now, Ara, as we wrap up, could you share a final piece of advice or insight that has been particularly impactful in your career?
Oh, for my career. So about how interesting. That's a good question. I think I'm going to take it back to sort of these basic principles of economics, which is that people make decisions on the margin, right? Really difficult situations, really difficult decisions are often, a challenge choosing between two very, very, very strong options. Mm-hmm. And so, as I've sort of gone down my career, I think I try to approach questions in the way I might break down an economics question or a business question. Right? I try to break things down into, the obvious one would be something like pros and cons, right? But I also try to sort of really evaluate what data do I have to support one decision over another. What evidence do I have for my own assumptions that I'm making, and can I actually dismiss some of my assumptions because they are right or wrong based on anything I've observed so far? So I think any business owner can make those same decisions for themselves. I admire anyone who goes into business who goes into entrepreneurship, because it is a path that is not for me. Right. I like sitting around and working with economic data and researching numbers, but I'm probably not the person who has the risk profile to start my own thing. But whenever I see people do it, I think it's really cool. And so I like to be someone who, from the sidelines, at least supports those individuals by telling them what I've been reading about and what I think I might think about if I were in their situation. At the end of the day, I'm much less much less skilled at that stuff than a business owner. Probably be nice to your customers. Everyone knows that. Be
No,
nice to
you
who
help
are like
you
as
help
annoying.
entrepreneurs with your insightful data and strategies. And thank you so much for, sharing all of that with us today. I mean, we really appreciate you taking the time to help us really understand the dynamics of the Canadian coffee and restaurant sectors through the lens of data. Again, thank you for your time today, Aro.
Sure. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, and that was the end of our discussion with Ara Harazian. And it's discussions like these that equip our listeners with the knowledge they need to navigate the evolving business landscape effectively. Again, a special shout out to our guests as well as our partners who make episodes like this possible. Our heartfelt thanks to RBC, our exclusive banking partner, UPS, our shipping partner, Zero, our accounting software partner, Constant Contact, our email partner, and to IAG, our exclusive hospitality partner, for exceptional service and support to the business community. Remember to subscribe to the Canadian SME Small Business Magazine at CanadianSME.ca for more engaging and informative episodes. Until next time, keep analyzing, keep optimizing, and keep pushing your business to new heights. Thank you.